If you're still dancing like this or like that, chances are that you had the time of your life in the 80s. And as an audiophile music lover, things were really kicking off. Behold, folks, the Stag. The coolest thing a teenager could have in 1985, right after a Commodore 64 and maybe a lava lamp. This system here just screams neon colors, big hair, spandex, MTV, Walkman, arcade games, Rubik cubes, and of course, not to forget, aerobics and yuppies and massive record stores. Yep, and of course, minimum a colorful head sweatband like this. This is 80s hi-fi caught in the crossfire of analog and digital during a time of huge technical advancements from the Japanese brand Denon. I'll be playing it like it's in 1985 and exploring whether 40-year-old quality hi-fi components still deserves attention today. We also do some critical sound comparisons, so throw on your headphones and nerd out here with me. Of course, we'll revisit some iconic 80s pop culture too. Sounds great? Then you're in the right place. Oh, and try to enjoy this in real time, just like we did in the 80s. If you're new here, subscribe and follow the series and check out the other great content on the channel. You can support the honest reviews on Patreon, where you get access to full-length, uncensored listening sessions and much more. You find everything Stjernholm Reviews on the link tree in the video description below this video. Remember the music of the 80s? I was a teenager in the 80s, on the edge of the digital revolution. And the music gear to play it well was rapidly changing. Denon's catalogs, which are found here in German, reflected this transition with products like the DCD 1700 CD player here, showcasing great improvements in early digital tech, while the PRA 1500 preamp and the MXM33HX cassette deck here stayed firmly in the analog world. Anyone serious about music back then had a full-size stack of components to do what we can do now with a simple streaming device. Here, I revisit what it took to make playlists, which before 1988 actually meant recording mixes to tape, and fine-tune FM radios, and optimize cassette recordings for that high-quality analog sound. Back then, the source really mattered. Things like vinyl wear and FM noise made things challenging. Today, even modest streamers can deliver satisfying sound effortlessly. But is it as fun without the struggle, I wonder? Where's the therapy of taking your time gone? As a teenager in the 80s, I was captivated by the magic of music and the technology that brought it to life at home. I was a music electronics nerd, but being an audiophile was actually out of reach. Premium hi-fi like this was insanely expensive compared to my paper route income. And that's why I became a DJ. Yeah, not to earn money, but to finance buying records and gear. A pair of these cost the equivalent of almost 6,000 euros today. But a guy could dream, right? Denon wasn't big on speakers at the time, only offering the Yamaha NS1000 style SC99 speakers, which I really couldn't find in working condition on the market. To represent, we have these little Dali speakers here, the Dali 2 from 1985, just to represent the period speakers here in the image. We will be using the SBR1 speakers, the big daddies here, as near-field monitors when we listen for all the little differences. The POA 4400A power amplifiers. The 4400A was actually the second generation of the iconic monoblocks, now featuring optical Class A. The monoblock design, high output, and the floor placement philosophy kind of set them apart from the average amplifiers on the market at the time. The evolution from the POA 4400 brought performance enhancements, keeping these amps relevant and respected. The legacy of the POA 4400 series continues to be appreciated by audiophiles who value the engineering and thoughtful design that Denon actually put into these icons. The ones I found here were purchased new in 1986 and have been in use ever since with no restoration. I just had them checked recently and adjusted, and all the components are original, so I say that is a thumbs up for the quality there. The amps are equipped with the A and B speaker outputs as well as variable input level adjustment, so they can be perfectly matched with any preamp. In the back we find balanced and single-ended inputs and trigger inputs for automatic on-off using a pretty unique 2-pin connector looking like this. You'll find the typical speaker connectors of the time that only accept extremely slim wire, so I had to make some adapters for banana plugs to make them easier to work with. These terminals just really sucks. The power cable is also fixed to the unit, typical for the time, which remind us that the super expensive power cables that we are being pushed on today might actually not improve sound enough to be even on the radar of the engineers of 1985. My initial impression is that it's a lovely and rather warm sound emitting from these amps compared to today's standards. It really suits the thinner, sheeny sound of the 80s pretty well. For preamp duties, we have the PRA 1500 here. At the time, Denon was in the midst of the digital transition, offering this PRA 1500 purely analog preamplifier alongside two cutting-edge digital models, the DAP 2500 and DAP 5500. Since we'll hear DACs from the era via the CD player here, I thought it would be much more fun to go with the analog preamp. This one features variable loudness compensation, a selectable subsonic filter, and even tone controls. Around the back we got a pair of balanced outputs, perfect for those monoblocks placed further away near the speakers. There's also something called Super Bass, a mono output intended for a subwoofer. What? Cool! Additionally, we are blessed with extensive tape monitoring features we use here for the graphic equalizer, a MM and MC phono stage, and even a remote that supports control of many of the components directly. Cool. And behold, friends, it might be the rarest of them all here, the highly sought after DP70 equalizer. It's a beast of a tool that at the time became less desirable for some irrational reasons, like audiophiles being obsessed with signal chain purity as things progress to digital. The DP70 is a highly practical tool with multiple uses. It adjusts frequency response in 12 bands individually for the left and the right channels, perfect for room correction or personal preference. It can be used to smooth out room issues or compensate for tape recording. This high-spec model here features very low distortion and even a built-in dynamics processor and expander, which can be integrated through the Tape I/O. It will be interesting to hear how much this device in the chain actually affects the sound, as it was a big worry for audiophiles at the time. Next, let's move on to the sources in the system, starting with the lovely DRM33HX cassette deck here. The compact cassette was originally introduced in 1964 as a dictation tape format by Philips. The cassette tape tormented audiophiles for decades with its inconsistent audio quality and many potential points of failure. This cassette deck was released in 1985 represented the peak of the format's refinement as a high-spec premium deck just before being challenged by the new digital formats. It featured advanced technologies like Dolby HX Pro, adjustable bias, computer-controlled precision mechanisms, separate recording and playback heads, and Dolby B and C noise reduction systems to minimize hiss and maximize fidelity. For today's music lovers, the complexity of operating and maintaining high-end cassette decks contrasts sharply with the simplicity of modern digital playback devices. We'll have lots of fun with it in part 2, where you can also hear how some of the different features work and hear the differences between normal, chrome and metal tape formulations. Denon actually introduced their first digital tape deck, and I'm not sure if it was the only one, to be honest. It was called the DTR 2000 DAT machine in 1987, costing 3 times more than this cassette deck, around the equivalent of 3,600 euros today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find one in working order, as the mechanism of that machine was really prone to failure. Next up, we turn to FM, a safe haven for the audiophile in the 80s. This TU-800 tuner costing a whopping $1,000, the equivalent of 2,500 euros today. It's definitely one of the top 5 high-end FM tuners of the time. FM radio was a cornerstone for audiophiles, offering one of the highest quality audio sources available, especially when broadcasts were live. It was also one of the primary ways to discover new music, as DJs took it upon themselves to introduce fresh tracks, and music lovers was glued to the radio, recording the latest song to replay on their Walkmans. What a contrast to the totally formatted Groundhog Day stations we have today. You know, to maximize FM's potential and tackle stereo FM reception challenges, high-end tuners like this came with a range of advanced features, including calibration tones for tape deck setup and loads of presets, where you could store your favorite radio stations, 30 in total on this model, as well as a signal meter showing you the signal strength of the stations you pick up. To pick up the few FM stations available in my area, I needed an antenna. This is a DTV/FM style active antenna for indoor use, sent to me by the awesome guys at AV Connection. Thank you, guys!
These guys are awesome and has a huge selection of accessories shipping worldwide. Check them out, honey. You find them at av-connection.com.
Let's dive into this little snacky pack here, the DCD 1700. It was introduced in 1987 and was a top tier that represented a significant leap in the digital audio technology. It played a crucial role in the transition from analog to digital, offering audiophiles a refined sound and innovative features like the ability to change the track sequence with this music calendar here on the display. This might seem like stupidly simple today, but it was a revelation at the time.
It's also got a little programmable memory, so that instead of playing the tracks in their right order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, you can select your own sequence in advance so that they play in any order you want. And all the while, the monitor tells you which track you're on and how many minutes and seconds it's been playing.
The player also featured a digital output that could be paired with Denon's DAP range of DAC-equipped preamps, ensuring high-quality sound for the most demanding listeners. Weighing in at almost 18 pounds, the DCD 1700 was only surpassed by its bigger sister, the DCD 3300, which tipped the scales at nearly 40 pounds. In today's dough, the DCD 1700 would be priced around 2,500 euros. Interestingly, it's €1,000 more than the current DCD 1700 NE currently in production from Denon that hit the markets in 2023. That's a fascinating reminder of how far digital technology has come in terms of both performance and affordability. The compact disc CD format, introduced widely in 1983, was developed by Philips and Sony and quickly gained popularity. It brought a new level of sound quality and durability and convenience compared to vinyl records and cassette tapes. By 1991, CDs had outsold other audio formats in the US, signaling the decline of vinyl and cassette dominance. The CD's arrival marked a watershed moment for music lovers, offering the promise of perfect sound, no wear and tear, and instant access to any track. Features that changed the way people interacted with their music collections. Lastly, our model speakers here. It's a pair of DALI 2s designed by none other than Peter Lingdorf, aimed at bringing high-quality hi-fi sound to the masses in the mid-80s. We won't be using these guys for any critical listening today, but if you're curious, check out the experiments video I did here, where I built a €250 sound system. Link in the description below. Now it's time to geek out over what made being an audiophile in the 80s so fascinating. It was a decade of transformation, with music shifting to digital, and the internet was still 10 or 20 years away. In fact, there was no internet. As a DJ, I would shop for records weekly, often relying on newsletters of new arrivals that were mailed to me. Music lovers made playlists on cassette tapes, the only practical medium actually at the time. You would record from the radio or mix tracks from your vinyl albums and CDs onto tape. It was really time-consuming, yet it was a pretty meditative process that often is underappreciated today. Just imagine trying to make a respectable cover for your tapes, writing up all the tracks, maybe making some nice drawings so you could find it in your rack. Coming to think of it, maybe that's why we didn't have as many letter diagnoses back then. You know, ADHD and OCD and identify as a hamster things, you know. We were maybe too busy focusing on getting that track recorded perfectly, sitting there in a kind of forced meditation, just waiting. You couldn't fast forward life. You had to live it, one song at a time. Pretty hard to feel restless when you're stuck listening to every second, waiting to hit that stop button at the right time. It's almost captured in this clip where the Macintosh computer is introduced in a TV program. It takes about 5 years to open a small word processor file, but everyone looking at it is amazed at how fast are progressing and how fast things are going.
Two of Macintosh is that things happen so quickly. Certainly fits into the ergonomic pattern of the user interacting quickly with the device.
It's just very direct, no complicated sequence of commands.
For the youngsters watching, cassette tapes like this has two sides. Okay? The playing time is ranging from 45 to 120 minutes, says here on the tape, and that is divided between the two sides. So a 90-minute tape would have 45 minutes on this side and 45 minutes on that side. Enjoy the noise. Oh yeah. Woo-wee! The compact cassette was originally designed for dictation purposes. There was other cassette formats existing at the time prior, but they were bulky and they were impractical. Huge tapes in big cassettes. The quality was dependent on track width and the tape speed. The faster the tape, the better the sound, but that meant the shorter the playing time. And it also represented a lot of challenges for the portability.
Squirrel!
Hi-fi companies, they worked hard to improve the sound quality over the years, and by the time the format peaked around here, using fine metal and chrome tapes, the sound was actually pretty good, as we will investigate. Tape formulas with chrome or metal particles gave you higher dynamic range and wider frequency response and less noise. However, copying tapes resulted in an unacceptable loss of quality for audiophiles, and there was always the risk of something going wrong during re-recording. The DR-M33HX stereo cassette tape deck was actually released in 1985, a couple of years before the digital audio tape DAT, or for short, was introduced. It includes most of the top features that cassette decks had in the era, like the Dolby HX Pro circuit, Dolby B and Dolby C noise reduction. Dolby B was the noise reduction system used on most commercial tape releases, and it would attenuate hiss by about 10 dB, while Dolby C would attenuate it 20 dB. A Dolby B tape could usually be played back without Dolby B and still sound kind of decent, but playing a Dolby C tape without Dolby C enabled would sound harsh and overly bright. The M33HX here also features HX Pro, which stands for Headroom Extension Professional. Unlike Dolby B and C, HX Pro only works during recording. It works by dynamically adjusting the bias level in real time, optimizing the high-frequency recording capability of the tape. This simply results in better high-frequency response and reduced distortion, especially in recordings with a lot of treble. Unlike Dolby systems, HX Pro doesn't need a decoder for playback, so it was compatible with all playback devices. Back in the 80s, if your deck didn't have HX Pro, you weren't considered a true audiophile, that's for sure. HX Pro really elevated cassette recording, especially in terms of detail. And as you can see, they made sure everyone knew by adding this lit up HX Pro sign, which doesn't do anything except to say, hey, we got HX Pro. A select few vendors also use the highly effective DBX noise reduction system, but it really never catches on due to compatibility issues and artifacts. Dolby simply was the standard. When recording to compact cassette tape, the goal is to record as loudly as possible without overdriving the tape. This keeps noise at bay, especially important when recording classical music with wide dynamic ranges and quiet parts where the noise becomes much more noticeable. The louder you record, the less noise, but if you push it too far, you will get distortion or simply just a lot of tape compression. The type of tape used plays a big role in how much level you can record and the basic noise floors. Normal tapes made with ferric oxide had a decent sound, but limited dynamic range and more noise. Chrome tapes was made with chromium dioxide, and metal tapes with the best dynamic range, the clarity and the least noise. These higher quality chrome and metal tapes were highly sought after by audiophiles. And today, sealed chrome and metal tapes like these are really rare and valuable since they are no longer produced. By pure luck, I managed to get my hands on 3 brand new tapes, one of each type, so I can unseal them and do a demo for you. But how good can it actually sound? I did a quick blind test with Sebastian from the Silverback listening team, adjusting bias and levels while recording on a chrome tape. When done right, these late-era cassette machines can actually deliver surprisingly good results. And now we are going to listen to the wonders of tape.
Oh.
Right?
Oh,
so
yeah. Now
you will tell me about
everything
how the sound of tape actually
is
was
perceived by
Yeah.
today's standards.
by today's standards. And the cool thing is that this is a 3-head machine,
Oh yeah.
so we can be recording and listening to the result at the same time.
Oh.
And I will take a kind of new, because they're really hard to get new, a kind of new
Yeah.
chrome cassette, just to be on the fairest we can be, inserted to the machine. And we will be monitoring the tape. I will be recording. So Dolby C,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Dolby C, direct from tape.
Kom nu mere diskant på det.
Okay, so the bias adjustment here should definitely be
Looking down on empty streets, all she can see are the trees old and sun.
Lidt mere mørk, more dark,
and now.
All of the
more bright.
on your daddy's arms again.
Tape,
Bruce,
direct,
swear they move that side.
tape,
Pretty even. Not so bad. Not too bad.
chrome tape,
Yeah, not too bad.
chrome tape, Dolby C,
Bias.
and bias adjusted, yeah.
Not too bad. And with a good tape, a chrome tape, it's
Yeah,
not
or
too
metal
bad.
tape, yeah.
It's not too bad.
No,
Yeah.
the problem came when you started to be dubbing tapes, and I made a copy of this,
Oh,
whatever,
yeah,
you know, then it just
Degraded.
became
Yeah.
totally non-audiophile,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's
Yeah.
pretty decent.
Yeah.
The key feature in this machine is the 3 heads. Lower spec machines use the same head for recording and playback. With a 3-head machine, you got a separate erase head, a separate recording head, and a separate playback head, allowing you to monitor your recording in real time. That's a huge advantage because you can adjust tape bias and recording levels and noise reduction by ear, comparing the input and playback signals instantly to ensure quality. Smart. However, cassette tapes had a major issue. To get the best quality, the tape heads had to be perfectly aligned with the tape, both in position and in angle, what is called azimuth. Only the highest end decks had a manual or automatic head alignment, so even if you had recorded on a top-notch deck, playback quality wasn't guaranteed on another machine. Yes, folks, the struggle was real when it came to tape. Another challenge could be speed variations caused by tiny inconsistencies to the motor or the capstan. The Denon DRM33HX here have dual and constantly spinning capstans to improve tape stability, reduce wow and flutter, and enhance tape control. And of course minimize wear as the tape is pulled more securely. The timer feature was super simple. By using an external electrical outlet timer powering on the deck would either start recording or start playback depending on the position of this switch. Unpacking a brand new tape. Behold, guys, smells like 90s to me. A simple way to check for speed issues is to record a test tone and listen to the playback. Luckily, the TU800 tuner here has a calibration button for just that purpose called Rec Calibration. Here's the clear tone from the tuner. Right? Sounding pretty clean. And this is how it sounds after hitting the tape. record my tape, listening back. Let's see how our test tone will sound when it comes back here. Right there. This is how it sounds from the tape. This is how it sounds from the source. Hear the difference? You hear those vibrations there? That's the Warren flutter on the tape. Simple as that. Let's just shut this capstan motor down, running all the time. Thank you. Lastly, this deck also have a MPX filter. It's actually also present here on the FM tuner, the TU-800, called MPX Noise Reduction. And what the hell is that? Well, it removes the 19 kilohertz pilot tone used for FM stereo broadcasts. This pilot tone is necessary for FM stereo to indicate stereo presence, but it can interfere with high-quality audio and noise reduction systems, especially Dolby systems. This station is broadcasting in mono on their stereo feed. That's right now. FM stereo broadcasting was noisy in general and needed a perfect signal to achieve decent noise level. Listen to this local station here. The transmitter is just 2 miles away and we have like a 6 out of 7 signal strength on the receiver here.
Velkommen og god fornøjelse. Mit navn er Jørgen Frank.
You hear the kind of noise levels we have here? No changes in moving the antenna? What we are hearing here is FM noise. And this is how it sounds in mono. Stereo. Mono. These guys play mostly mono music anyway, so I would just listen to it in mono, but it just showed how sensitive stereo signals actually were. Lots of noise, lots of issues with reception and such. This tuner in particular, it has tons of features for optimizing problematic reception, lots of presets, the built-in MPX filter, and more. It was considered one of the best FM tuners in the mid-80s, at least top 10. The struggle to get a good reception was all in the antenna used at the time, typically outside antenna, and how it was placed. For this, I use a modern DTV/FM active antenna here, kindly sent to me for this video by the awesome guys at International Reseller AV Connection. Now on to the DCD 1700.
That's it. The biggest revolution in the recording industry since the invention of the long-playing gramophone record.
And finally, the most important thing is the dynamic range is remarkable, 90 dB, which hi-fi buffs will agree is very remarkable.
Actually, the compact disc's ability to access any track like that, boom, on the disc was a big deal. Just think about all the time, meditative or not, that was spent winding tapes and handling vinyl, or making mixtapes that avoided the worst tracks. The DCD 700 here was a $1,000 CD player in 1987. Adjusted for inflation, that's around 2,600 euros today. It featured a PCM56P KDAC, which converts the digital signals to high-fidelity analog audio. It boasted an impressive dynamic range of 96 dB and a signal-noise ratio of 106 dB. The player is really robust, around 8.8 kilos, and the weight minimized vibrations and external interference. The CD transport mechanism had to be secured during transport underneath the player, indicating a floating isolation system, something even many modern players today can't boast. A notable feature is the coaxial digital output, which could be switched on and off here. At the time, engineers likely considered the digital output a potential noise source, but the analog output remains active on this player when the digital output is on. This allowed users to connect the CD players to external DACs, or intended maybe for those digital DAP preamps they sold at the time. Some 80s CDs included pre-emphasis, a process designed to improve the signal-to-noise ratio by boosting high frequencies during recording and then de-emphasizing them during playback. The DCD 1700 handled pre-emphasized CDs, ensuring accurate playback, though the system didn't always work smoothly. If using a modern external DAC or a modern CD player like this today, it is very likely to run into problems by not applying the de-emphasis. Thankfully, not many CDs used it. I've only stumbled upon this Toto album by right now in the original pressing that uses the emphasis system. One thing I noted to my surprise was the compatibility of this old player. It handles the CD layer of SACDs and also plays burned CD media. So if that is of a concern, it should not hold you back from flirting with a vintage player like this. The first burning question: how does converters from 1987 hold up today? The rate of improvement was insane from 82 to 87, that's for sure. And it's easy for us here to evaluate the sound quality simply by using the digital output of the CD player and feed it into a modern-day DAC. I will be using the Cocktail X45 Pro DAC player thingy we have down here that actually features some pretty decent converters, sounding very modern. But what music should we use? It's such a diverse decade of music where so many artists took pride in their creativity and people bravely went where no one had gone before. After much consideration, I settled on using something suitable for critical listening, something authentic of the time. Florence Warner singing Pirate, picked from this Philips CD music sampler from 1982. This is our original, and there's impressive dynamics on this track that sounds just like it did back then. So let's get the show on the road. The built-in converters of the CD player.
Night has no sympathy, and morning finds me all alone. The only love I've ever known has sailed away and left me to my tears. And like a stowaway, a part of me has followed him. And I may never love again, for I'm imprisoned by his memory.
And modern day DAC.
Pirate, you stole my heart. Was it just one more treasure? Pirate, oh the shadows of the past haunt me till I can bear no more of sad goodbyes and closing doors, and I retreat into my fantasy that soon he will return, and more than man becomes again. In time we learn to be content with little things like fantasies and dreams. You stole my heart. Was it just one more treasure? Pirate, oh pirate, have I lost you forever?
What we were listening to here was me switching between the 86 converters and the modern day converter. And what I heard from doing that was subtle differences. It's a bit smoother, the new converter, just a tad. And the most profound thing was actually like the soundstage got a little bit bigger, and there was like more room between the elements in the music. It's a terrific recording of her voice, and that EP piano there has so beautiful dynamics and timbre and overtones, and it's all very dynamic and beautifully mixed. It's a nice, simple thing. I think it's an analog basic recording, then recorded to digital, because there's a little tape noise as well you hear. I don't know if you picked up on that back there. But anyway, great track, I must say. Wow. We need to hear the modern stuff as well, which is some more complex jazz. So let's see if the old CD player here can actually play this SACD thing that was not even invented at the time. Let's listen. There is absolutely nothing that could resemble the listening fatigue kind of DACs we had in the early 80s here. I think it actually sounds pretty smooth. There is a difference. We get a bit larger sound image. We get some more spaciousness, but it's really in the limit here when we switch in between them. Maybe you agree on your headphones. I don't know how much you can actually pick up on the sound image as such in this position. You should have a pretty good idea about it. No crazy changes to tonality or anything like that. I am impressed with the converters of this CD player and totally understand why that would be considered something special in its time. I also did this exercise with Tim Harris and Sebastian from the Silverback listening team, blind listening. Just have the
It's
feeling that it
shouting.
will sound better up here.
More easy on the ear. Quite clear to hear the distinction. I think switching between the darks, it's much less pronounced.
Yeah.
I would say they were listening to now is the modern stuff.
Yep. Tonality-wise, I mean, when you listen to that original CD on the original CD player,
Yeah.
versus through the modern day converter, you got that feeling of something being held better together, less rough edges,
Yeah.
smoother presentation, right?
Yes.
Finer grained in some sense.
Yep.
You could hear a difference.
Yes.
The same kind of difference here.
Less pronounced, more of a lack of feeling of space.
Interesting.
In its
Try to
expression.
play now. I might have switched. I might have not switched.
Oh, you little sneaky devil. Yeah.
Yeah. Next, the PRA 1500 preamp here. The tone control and the variable loudness circuits weren't really done exceptionally well, but thankfully, they can be bypassed. And trust me, there's a noticeable quality difference when they're out of the signal path. You can engage the tone control separately, and there's even a dedicated clean headphone mode for this decent headphone output. Let's have a listen to how that sounds. I think we go back to Miss Warner here and hear how that stuff works on track 4. See how quick that goes. She comes right here. We'll just go to the portion where there's a little more action. And now listen to this. It simply turns down the level while raising the bass a little bit and the treble a little bit. But it's all relative to the volume that you might be playing at, which is kind of a mess because you have to adjust several things at once if you want some kind of listening level, average listening level. So turning the loudness knob here is actually kind of annoying, to be honest. Also, the balance function is only working if the source direct is off. Then you can use the balance button. And I actually don't know about the subsonic filter there, if that also needs the source direct to be off. Pretty interesting. Then you have some tone controls, more bass, less bass, more treble,
Early in the morning,
less
middle
treble.
of the afternoon.
So they are quite effective and set on some decent center frequencies, I think. It's like it's getting a little grainier model down there when we engage it, and that's when both of the controls are in neutral. I wouldn't feel that comfortable actually using that stuff. So what about the graphical equalizer then? This equipment was loaned to us by HiFiScandinavia.dk, worldwide shipping. Thank you, guys. We have had it inserted all the time with the EQ being in direct mode, so the signal is just passing through. Let's take it from the top, and I'll try just to switch it in and out up here, keeping it inserted so we don't have the little fallout there, the little dropout. It's on now.
Night has no sympathy,
Now it's direct.
and morning finds me all alone. The only love I've ever known has sailed away and left me to my tears. And like a stowaway, a part of me
It's very, very subtle, but you can hear when it's engaged, especially when you see the button goes in, then you kind of hear it. But I'm not sure you could pick it up in a blind test just like that. So it's a very, very little price to pay to actually get the tools here. So what does the tool actually do, this graphic equalizer? Let's have a closer look at this. It's really interesting. The first thing I notice here is a kind of interesting lid. Why the hell did they put on a lid? Of course, when Daddy set his EQ, he don't want the damn kids to come in there and mess up his settings because you can't put them in a preset or anything like that. It's not digital. But the labeling down here saying what frequency we are working with is kind of hard to see, as you can see, because we have the bottom of the lid there. That could have been done more elegantly, or why didn't you write it up here, guys? Come on. It's just like the first thing I would notice when seeing the prototype of this product is, guys, what the hell are you doing? Put it up there. But they didn't. So it's a nice little quirk of the DE70. We also have a nice little panel over here actually showing us what's going on. We get the input or output levels going through the machine. And we can also see if we have the expander or the dynamics processor engaged, and if we're using the tape in and outs, which is smartly integrated into this unit, where we actually get to choose the rec output here. So we can dub between two cassette decks, and we can record even while we are stealing our tape input here, the monitor input for the EQ. So it kind of doubles what we have capacity for. And we can monitor. This is what I actually use to switch to the DAC and switch to the tape and listen to the direct signal from the preamp here. So how does the EQ sound? Let's listen to the high frequencies.
Oh, pirate, have I lost you forever?
Okay. If you have something a little dull sounding, pick up there.
The shadows of the past haunt me till I can bear no more.
Sounds like air up here, very nice. This is great for speakers like this that can be a little hard in the top end. You could actually just take it down a little bit to remove what you feel is a little harsh. Very cool.
He will return, and more than that because of me.
And up here,
In time,
it's definitely mostly air that we hear. And up here, it's just the sparkles of sparkles up here. So effectively, this graphic EQ maybe have 10 bands, not 12. The lowest and the highest band, I think it's a little poorly chosen. But at the time, we have to remember that there was subsonic frequencies in record players and so on. That's why you have a subsonic filter here that you might want it to filter out to not destroy your little Dali speakers here. So it's all good. Very, very practical with the graphical EQ. I'd enjoyed it quite a bit in this room where there's a room mode around 46 Hertz that can be helped a little away by lowering a little bit here when the speakers are against the wall. Very nice. And maybe one speaker is more corner placed than another, giving more problems. So you could actually lower the lower bass for that speaker tucked away in the corner. Very cool and very practical. That's what I like with graphic EQs. And of course, we also just need to talk quickly about the expander and dynamics processor. That would typically be used in conjunction with recording tape, okay? Where you could use the dynamic processor and just let it hammer away on reducing the peaks in the material. And when playing it back, you could apply the expander to actually expand what you just compressed, thus actually giving you more headroom on the tape. That's what it's intended for. But you can also just play around with it and see if you think you like it better. let's just try to program a quick sequence down here. It's kind of funny. Let's say we were doing a mixtape. You would just go program and say, I want track 4, I want track 6, and I want track 7. That updates the music calendar there, and you just go play. Really easy. Next, let's bring the M33HX here into action. There's a normal position tape sitting here, and I already opened that one. Brand new cassette, new old stock. And I also have a brand new chrome and a brand new metal tape here. So let's hear the difference in noise, the bass noise on the tape. Let's hear how different that is. Ain't much of a difference. I would love to do a pretty hot recording on these tapes using all the bells and whistles of the time. So we use Dolby C for noise reduction.
For I'm imprisoned by his memory. Pirate, you stole my heart.
Direct.
Was it just one more treasure?
Tape.
Pirate, oh.
I mean, these late machines, they were not half bad. It's pretty impressive. And this is only using the chrome cassette here. Let's bring in that metal tape.
And like a stowaway, a part of me has followed him.
Direct.
And I may never love again, for I'm imprisoned
Tape.
by his memory. Pirate, you stole my heart.
Yeah. It's impressive performance from that metal tape. You understand why they are so sought after, no doubt. But they can really take some juice in the recording levels, meaning that noise overall will be lower. The sound might also be a little bit more fine-grained. It's still, I think, the results we got on the normal tape that I will revisit now were not half bad, but it's not as capable in the recording level. So we'll have to turn it down a couple of dBs not to overdrive the tape.
And I retreat into my fantasy that soon he will return. And
Not exactly just as vivid as the metal tape here, I must say. You pick up the difference pretty fast.
with little things like fantasies and dreams.
You pick up on that? It seems way smoother on the metal tape, actually. So there's a sound quality difference in there that you definitely notice. So in the long run, you'll probably be really, really happy using a metal tape or a chrome tape. The difference is not super subtle. It's definitely something you can pick up on, but normal tapes are not as bad as they are made out to be. They were probably used for dictation and, just recording off the radio and things that was not that important. And then you would use the chrome and metal tapes, not in production anymore, in order to get your really good mixtape recordings. Wow, that was interesting. The 44A amplifiers here are completely original. They sound great. I mean, the listening team and I did A/B comparisons with modern hi-fi using an A/B switch. Okay, now we just have you guessing, okay? And you just tell me what it is. Okay? Yeah. It was a very funny exercise showing that this 80s hi-fi holds up surprisingly well, and even in some cases offers a more pleasant harmonic distortion. Full sessions are available on Patreon, and I'll argue if you love 80s music, it might actually sound better on a system like this. It adds the flavor that producers of the time probably was hearing while they were mixing, I'm guessing. I had so much fun playing around with and listening to all this stuff from the past. It's a fun and affordable way to enjoy hi-fi sound and connect with history. This even inspired a playlist curated with help from the Make Hi-Fi Great Again Facebook group, digging up forgotten 80s gems while avoiding the overplayed hits. The playlist is called 80s Flashback by Stjernholm Reviews and is available on your streaming service. Find it in the link tree down there in the description, and please do suggest more hidden gems from 1982 to 1986 in the comment section to include in this dynamic playlist. That will be, of course, continuously updated for your discovery pleasure. When is the last time you actually sat down and just listened to a full album, start to finish, without any distractions? Try it. It might just save you a shrink bill. Mark my words. Until next time, check out the other great content on the channel and go wild in the comments, okay? See you there. And now, guys, let's just listen to the system, as clean as possible. No EQs inserted, just straight from the CD player, no filtering, no nothing on the SBR1s.